Now, despite criticism from within his own party, and there's been plenty of it, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is defending his decision late last week to reverse course and vote for Republican legislation that averted a government shutdown. Let's take a listen.
I assure the public, a shutdown would have been the greatest disaster we have to put the government in the sole hands of the evil, nasty, nihilistic people like Musk and Vogt and Trump. Would have been the greatest. We would have had half the federal government we have now. So I thought I did the thing a leader should do. Even when people don't see the danger around the curve, my job was to alert people to it, and I knew I'd get some bullets.
I want to bring in our political reporter panel. Tom LoBianco is the founder and editor of 24 Site News. Jasmine Wright, a reporter for NOTUS. Remember, News of the U.S. That's what NOTUS stands for. So Chuck Schumer is trying to rebuild bridges, Tom. It's not easy.
Yes, this is, even for a master such as himself who's been around the hill for quite a bit.
Long time.
Things are moving pretty fast. You have to think about this. I was looking at police being called to the U.S. Institute of Peace. You're starting to see Democrats, opposition, folks who do not support this massive takeover by DOJ and Trump, getting a little bit more agile in their responses, but you still have these negotiations that have to go on, and you have to wonder, particularly with Schumer on this. You have a lot from the left of the party. I'm starting to hear people talk about quote unquote Democratic Tea Party. We're seeing a lot of outrage now, or it's not
grassroots outrage. In other words,
very legit grassroots outrage. So, is that something where he can say at the outset? Can he say, oh, well, we absolutely have to support it because otherwise it would be disastrous? Or does he have to play the long game, which is what he did, and say towards the end, hey, look, we looked at this. We have to sacrifice 10 votes, 10 Democratic votes. Everyone else can vote against it. It's kind of it's an inverted Mitch McConnell, if you will.
Jasmine, your perspective?
Yeah, I think that so much of this is strategy that people are complaining about, but I think it also goes down to messaging. How are they messaging to the Democratic base that has very much so told them repeatedly that they are not happy with them, that they're not happy with the way that they're reacting to Trump in these last 5 weeks, and that they want to see more of a pushback from their leaders? I don't think it's every Democrat going up to their leader and saying, we want you to shut down the government, but certainly there were some Democrats in these red districts that said, we want you to do more, and they feel like House Democrats and Senate Democrats did not really answer the call. So I think that you're seeing Hakeem Jeffries, minority leader of the House side, Chuck Schumer, trying to basically coax now the Democratic Party to say, okay, we had this event, we heard you, now let's move on, taking your criticism along. But I think it's really unclear whether or not they're going to come with them and for how long. Specifically when we're talking about Schumer, I think that he's falling into the conversation of whether or not his age is a part of the reason why he's not connecting maybe to part of the Democratic
Is he generationally out of touch?
Yes, is he generationally out of touch, which I think a lot of older Democrats have been susceptible to. And so I think that, they are both trying to turn the page from this moment, but I don't know if they're going to be able to, just because of how mad people are, not even because the government didn't shut down, but because of the response from Democrats.
Tom, it's interesting when Chuck Schumer was on CBS Mornings today, he was basically saying something that Elon Musk didn't say, but reporters from Wired came on this show last week and said, quietly, he's letting everyone know, I'd love a shutdown because I think I can go faster than I can currently go right now.
And that
now, whether or not Democrats are right about that, they internalized that and acted accordingly.
So much of this from this second Trump administration is messaging, threats, telegraphing ahead of time. And that was a real threat.
And then try to destabilize your political opposition through that.
Yes, absolutely. And it's working, all right, or at least it has been working so far. We're starting to see the left, center left starting to catch up with it. But yeah, absolutely. This was talked about, behind the scenes even a little bit beforehand. All right, long before Chuck Schumer got to the point of saying, all right, we have to put together 10 Democratic votes so it's not this apocalyptic vision of things. All right, so, but people who are experts around Washington who keep tabs on this stuff, they know, all right, mechanics. And again, this goes to the second Trump administration where they've gotten very good at mechanics. They were not good at it the first time around. You know, maybe everybody needs to do a Garfield from now on, you know, wait 4 years and spend 4 years studying in the wilderness. But the speed with which they're doing the mechanics has made this a bigger problem for the Democrats, for how they respond.
And Jasmine, everything in Washington moves to the next battlefront after something like this.
Sure.
Democrats are upset. They're yelling at each other, but they also know there's another thing coming, which is this larger national conversation about extending the Trump tax cuts, perhaps adding more. How do you finance that? How much of that lands on Medicare, Medicaid? Where do Democrats find themselves preparing for that next conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are both those conversations happening simultaneously, but the reality is that Democrats can no longer rely on dysfunctional Republicans. I think that that is what we saw. That is the biggest takeaway message from that Friday fight, which is that Republicans are staying together even if they don't necessarily like the bill that's being put forward. You had a lot of House Freedom Caucus Republicans, those folks on the far, far right, who voted for a reconciliation package, voted for a continuing resolution package.
Who had never done so
who
before.
had never done so before, but did so because Donald Trump stepped in and said, these are the cuts that we're going to be able to make post if you trust us and pass this bill first. That's not something that has happened before. And so they're really being able to bring along their entire party and be really united in a way that Democrats have not really experienced them, at least in the last 10 years. And so, you know, at the same time as they're having these major party conversations about who are we and what do we stand for and how do we message that to our voters, they're also, as you said, going to have to deal with the mechanics, and they're very different this time around.
And Tom, Chris Murphy was on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart last night, and he said Democrats have to take more risks in politics in order to tell the base and the activists that we're willing to risk ourselves, and we're going to ask you to go to the streets and protest or do whatever.
Yes. I mean, this is...
So when they come back to Washington, they better start showing something, it sounds to me. Like he's setting the expectations for that and possibly angling for Schumer's job.
Yes. He has...
Oh, Lord.
Say the quiet part out loud. Senator Murphy staff, call me anytime.
Well, Ben is running for governor, so we know that. So you take him out of the mix. You know, look, my colleague over at 24 site, Michael Cohen, the pollster, not the Trump lawyer, former Trump lawyer, wrote a very good piece related to this about Gavin Newsom bringing on Bannon, bringing on Charlie Kirk. And you've actually seen Chris Murphy doing this a lot, too, migrating to places like Substack, Blue Sky, you know, these new...
To find other venues to message.
Exactly. And you've had a lot of... You've had so many people after the election, you know, after all the postmortems and everything, okay, after you get past that, it's like, okay, but how do we reach voters?
Right. What's next?
And Murphy has been very good at that. I mean, remember, not that long ago, it feels like a decade ago, but it's only a couple of years ago that Murphy helped pass gun legislation in Congress in the year 2022.
Right.
Like now, like actual legislation.
Someone to keep an eye on. Exactly.
Yes.
Tom LoBianco, Jasmine Wright, thank you so very much. I appreciate it.